Hey everybody, this is Brad Dyke out here saying hi to you and hope everything is doing good. Most of the time when I'm doing this kind of work, I do it to help a lot of you just kind of get over and have some fun in your labs and so on and so on. But some of you are professionals and you work in the environments of operations or a system platform or an application environment or an API environment and so on and so on and so on. Without getting into too much of the nitty gritty, some of you are also directors and managers and you're wanting to look at maybe bringing, let's say, AI into your environment. Let's say your operations, right? And you want to integrate AI into your environment, but you haven't made the transition to a DevOps discipline yet. So with that being said, what do you do? How do you do it? What's the right steps? Now, in my LinkedIn profile, I've reached out and I've linked some videos to some really great professionals out there. The very first thing you need to do is raise your hand and say, I don't know. If you have an enterprise environment that is on the traditional back-end CapEx operations environment, therefore you have a lot of the legacies that we would call it today. It wasn't so much legacy not 5 years ago, but it is now. And you have stop windows, you have outage windows, you have this, you have that. And it's a significant process for operations to do anything. But if you transition to DevOps, then you begin to integrate with CI/CD, which is continuous integration, continuous development, which allows you to deploy on the go in a more seamless automated format. But, it's difficult if you're a director or you're an architect that's in an acting capacity as director to say, how do I take this legacy to DevOps? Well, 3 years ago, that's the right question. Today, it is not the right question. The right question today is to say, how do I go from the legacy operations IT environment for integrated technologies to bring it into today's version of what we think we need for a DevOps environment? And I would say at this point stage, if you haven't started yet, then you need to consider integrating AI to that equation. AI chat is not a bad resource. It's a great example of how that works. But the real secret is experience. And you don't have it. Every company, number one, is different. So there isn't an established 1, 2, 3. The real truth of the matter is there's an established learning process to understand how your version of your system, software, operations, and resource configuration functions evolve into this capacity. So what does that mean? Well, the truth of the matter, what it means is that you are looking at an environment here that can do quite a bit for you, right? But at the same point in time, it can't. You don't know how to get it there. That's the challenge. So if I were to say, start DevOps disciplines now, start building your procedures, start building your automation, and so on now, I would be remiss to say, hey, we missed a key detail here. Bringing AI into the equation allows you to receive advanced notice of modifications, enhancements, and other functionalities that could help you write your scripts better. It can depreciate the learning curve to a certain degree as well. That's valuable. I know this personally twice now with environments and teams and dealing with the cloud environments. Clouds offer a complexity to your environment because you have the dependencies of the services of each cloud provider. I don't care who they are. It all exists, it's all real, and it's present. That is also a very critical value. And so using a collective knowledge base is more effective when you want to transition from a legacy 1, 2, 3 into an automated process for continuous development. That's the secret sauce here. So how do you do that? Well, obviously the first thing you've got to do, and this is crucial in regards to this, is you have to document your environment. You have to find out how many things you really have out there and what fits into the DevOps role. Understand that DevOps is not IT operations. It isn't. Integrated technology operations is the sustainment and operational capacity that the SRE is required for. That means it's the environment that provides reliability for your production systems to operate on a 24/7 hour basis in regards to 365 days a year. That's operations. DevOps is a crucial component of that in an automated functionality. It's less manual, is another way of referring to it. It brings to bear some of the resources that which you can use in regards to the reallocation of resources on the fly. Resources mean compute, memory, storage, bandwidth, clusters, and so on. It also regards to configurations of the operating system, the configurations of the application, services, and of course the applications themselves, and of course code enhancements and code deployments, which DevOps doesn't do, DevOps deploys. There's a big line right there. Know where your lines never should cross. DevOps operations should never in any way, shape, or form be the developer of the functional code. Now that doesn't apply from the operations side of it, but DevOps is operations, so they can do that part. In other words, they can write their code and streamline their code for deploying resources and how your services are set up so that you can have them available, but they don't work in the application level and they don't work in the code level. That's important because that's a full-time job all by itself. If you try to get your DevOps team to do all of those functionals, you failed right from the beginning. What you have to understand is there's a limitation that you want to impose on your DevOps teams to be the executioners of the discipline, not the developers of the resource tools themselves. And all that basically means in a nutshell is that you have coders out there streamlining code. You have the applications teams that are bringing in those resources. That's usually on the engineering side of the thing. And then at the end of the day, when it goes to a production level, those 1, 2, 3s they help build out will then go into a CI/CD process so that they don't have to worry about that anymore. They just line their code up and say, this is the next release. Release is handed over. DevOps executes. Next, what's next? Can we do it tomorrow? Can we do it in 6 hours? You see how fast it can go? But to make sure that you've got the line in the sand that your code side of things are not being approved, not being coded, not being improved upon by DevOps. But when DevOps does get it, it's their job to make sure that whatever you bring across the board meets the test/quality/production criteria, also known as 3-in-1. So the coders do all their work in the test environment, and the DevOps people do all their pre-work in the test environment, and they standardize. Once they've standardized in the test and everything's the way they want it to be, they redeploy it again in a clean version in more of a systematic process in quality. And then the quality engineers come in and make sure everything is correct, that we're seeing the proper performance metrics, access requirements, guidelines, securities, and so on. Once that's done, and only then should it go to the director of operations for approval to be deployed to production. At that point stage, the code is merged. If you're using like GitHub and resources like that, it's prepared, it's prepped for deployment using your CI/CD tools such as Jenkins or GetActions and so on. And at that point stage, the execution happens, and then the post-execution steps will kick into effect. Lessons learned also is put into the equation because you use that to make it better the next time, every single time. It's about being faster, cleaner, and more efficient as you go forward. And of course, post-monitoring, performance metricsing, trend analysis, and final review to say, hey, everything went well. Now, it seems like it takes a lot of time, but the truth of the matter, it doesn't when you get good at it. But at the beginning, and every time you bring a new product into your production environment, it'll be a little sluggish. But compared to my experience with operations of the legacy, we're shaving days and weeks off, which is the inevitable goal that you want to accomplish. Now, the other thing that's very important to understand that skill sets are valuable and skill sets make a difference, but skill sets also have to be in-house. And that's something that we're not a big fan of in the legacy environment because we offshored most of our resources. But DevOps is a close home environment and a close integration hub. You can still use offshore resources. It's just you have to bring your discipline in and back into a more holistic model that will create that immediate response time that you're going to need. That's not usually the case that you experience with offshore resources. It takes more time because of the span of the day when people are operational and the span of the time when people are executing and working versus production hours, which is usually most of the case U.S. time uh, on the norm for most companies in the United States, and that's what I'm basing this on. With that being said, the next component to that is understand what tools you use today. They're not DevOps tools, but they're tools. They're used on the code side, they're used on the operations side, and in between. That includes Jenkins, that includes Sonar, that includes GitLab, that includes GitHub, and many, many other tools. They're not in a quasi deployable state yet as CI/CD, but you need to document what you have. Then you need to document the processes those current tools are being used for. Once you document these things, now you're finally at the edge where you can leap off and start transitioning into a test phase like approach to bringing DevOps up in operations. I will tell you right now, to do it right means you do it by steps, and to do it by steps means it takes time. Average time frame 16 to 24 months for usual baseline DevOps deployment models. After that, things speed up very quickly, and you want to make sure that when they do start to speed up, you don't lose your momentum. It doesn't take much to stop it. It's all about the process. Break the process because you may want to lower a cost somewhere, or you want to reduce your operational overhead or something like that. That does run the risk of bringing DevOps almost to a complete standstill. Why? Your tools, your services, your cloud provider, all of these things, and your own coding teams on their own deployment windows. They immediately clash with each other if you look to transition and migrate ineffectively. So what's what you want to be very careful about? That means that if you have documented your environments, identified your application tools, documented how those tools are used in your environment, and you're able to start doing a testing model, then the very first thing you got to do is go to your executive management and say, hey, this is the window we're going to do this. Are you going to require any cost reductions or anything like that? Do I have any funding? Do I have any allocations? Anything like that to go forward? Get it all up front. Get it fully documented, because sometimes things change in the middle, and it's not going to be your issue because you had a written specification with all the guidelines and supports and costs and all that good stuff provided to you, and you have it in writing and everybody blessed it. But when things happen, and they do happen, by the way, take it, spin with it, adjust it. It might grow out your timetables, but be malleable. That's the whole thing about DevOps, is you're very flexible. You're able to transition from one aspect to another aspect using a different approach. And that's something that is not so rigid as it would be with traditional style deployments, which we've done in the past. Once you get your DevOps started and you're learning your lessons, every company has to do this. You have to learn your lessons, and you have to have your SRE director or an enforcer or somebody there constantly saying, where's the SOP? Did you update your SOP? Are you following the steps? Who's your counter check? Counter check as in you never deploy anything by yourself. You always deploy it with an alternate. Your checks and balances to make sure that everything matches up, that coincide with your engineering team, and so on and so on. You have to do those things because that's what keeps your momentum going. Lastly, the other component that's going to come into this equation are new products for introduction, like analytics, like pairing, like report matrixing, CRMs, and so on. When you do those, you have to understand that you're no longer a capital X or a legacy X operations environment. You are a true blue moving machine. And when a new environment is introduced, such as analytics and so on, you should always have the prerequisites and requirements met. What are they? Cost. You've got to buy something, you have to put it somewhere, and somewhere has usually, if it's production related, it has to be high availability, and has to be distributed, and has to have a DR model to it, and so on and so on. Those costs are identified. They're brought to the table, paid for as a new effort. This will generate new operational overhead budget that has to go into the operations that the DevOps is going to rely on to pay for those new add-ons that are coming into the system and adjust the budget yearly wise to reflect the support for that product coming in. Once that occurs, the other component to it is man hours. You see, if you don't pay attention to these details as projects come in, you can consume your DevOps before they ever get to a point of stability while they're bringing themselves up to an operational state. You have to consume based on your available work hours, based on the available man hours you have in place. 2,080 hours is the allocation per employee per year, and they go quick when it comes to multiple deployment environments on a weekly basis. So if you aren't careful, you might have checked all of your balances and your points and your stuff for the new products you're introducing, but if they come in and they require 280 hours of additional man-hour workloads, and of that, 80 hours of that belongs to DevOps, and they're already sustaining 28 applications at 80-hour sets, we've already blown the 2,080-hour model right out of the water. It's basic math. You just add them, track them, and then take them against the 2,080-hour allocation for those DevOps engineers, and you're going to know when you're going to have to ask for more people, more resources. And that can be really difficult because DevOps is a progressive model, not like CapEx style strategies where they can do prognosis announcements and say, hey, we look at this and we projected our allocation budgets will be X, like 7%. Doesn't work like that. These guys come in with specific details, accurate numbers, hopefully accurate numbers in hours as well, to getting it into an operational state and receiving periodical maintenance and automatic updates as it goes forward. So at that point in stage, now you have the reality of bringing up in this short 15-minute topic discussion of, learn what you've got. What is your legacy? Document it. What are the tools you use today? Document it. Know the processes. Understand your costs. Understand your man hours. Understand that every time something new comes into the equation, it costs you money and it costs you hours, and you've got to track them in accordance as you're trying to standardize that CI/CD process and your DevOps support model that you're providing for your customer base. And in this case, your customer base is your company. Well, this is Brad Dyke signing off. This is just another one of my little non-technical, technology-based videos. I hope this helps some. It's all good. This all follows the pathways of Black Sigma disciplines and other industry standard disciplines such as ITIL. This is just evolutionary effect that we see out there. But at the end of the day, it's still operations. Well, this is Brad Dyke signing off. God bless, and you guys have a great week. Take care.